Psalm 122 directs us to pray for the peace of Israel. Welcome to Freedom Alive. Throughout its history, Israel has faced many attempts at its destruction. Various wars have all brought Israel to the brink of annihilation. But God. And now, October 7th, 2023, as well as the war with Iran starting in February 26, have again put the bullseye on this small country. Matti Shoshani is CEO for Sar-El Media and Production Company. He's also an Israeli-born Messianic Jew and serves as a reserve captain in the IDF in Judea and Samaria. Matti joins us from Israel to connect our biblical roots of faith with current events and Middle Eastern geopolitics. I'm joined again by our co-host and my friend Matt Staver from Liberty Counsel. And Matt, when we look at the ongoing conflict in Israel since the very beginning and all of its enemies, do you think there will ever be peace in this country?
Well, I think Israel will always be a target for annihilation, and it has been from the very beginning, even before 1948, when Israel was an independent nation that was rebirthed again after the Holocaust. And you go all the way back to the time of Joseph in Egypt. They wanted to annihilate the Jewish people. Instead, they flourished. The different empires that came through history wanted to annihilate the Jewish nation, Israel, and the Jews, and that never happened. The Holocaust obviously attempted to eliminate the Jews, and against all odds, that never happened as well. And then right on the heels of the Holocaust, Israel becomes an independent nation in 1948. And it's always from then on continually been focused against by different nations to eliminate them. And you have to ask yourself the question, why? Why is that so? And I think there's a biblical answer to that and a spiritual component to it as well.
Amen. We cannot wait to bring that answer to you. But Liberty Counsel's Freedom Alert is next.
John Hancock was the first to sign that piece of parchment. After much dispute and a powerful speech by John Adams, the Resolution of Independence was adopted with 12 affirmative votes and 1 abstention. With this, the colonies officially severed political ties with Great Britain. On July 4th, the final wording of the Declaration of Independence was approved and sent to the printer. Church bells rang out over Philadelphia, declaring the Declaration had been officially adopted. Rioters shouted the news. There was celebration with shouts, the firing of guns, and the ringing of bells. The Declaration was read to audiences and reprinted in newspapers across the 13 states and colonies. As we prepare to celebrate the 250th anniversary of America, let's never forget to protect the priceless freedom on which this great nation was founded.
Up next, Matt's interview with Matti Shoshani.
I am very pleased to welcome a very special guest and a friend, Matti Shoshani, all the way from Israel. Welcome to Freedom Alive, Matti.
Thank you. It's good to be with you, Matt.
Well, you may recognize Matti Shoshani because we have shown on this and many other stations around the country and even around the world through TBN and other sources as well, our Why Israel Matters 13-part original series. And Matti was the actual host and the voice on that Why Israel Matters series that Liberty Counsel and our Christians in Defense of Israel and Covenant Journey Ministry produced. So thank you, Matti, for all you're doing. I want to jump right in. You've been in the reserves. You still are a member of the IDF Reserve, but you also work in private life. You're the CEO of the Sar-El Media and Production Company. You're a captain in the IDF. And since October 7, you've been in the reserves and really on the front lines for months and months and months. I want to go back, first of all, just to tell people what it's like to live in Israel, especially at this time. And then I want to go back to October 7 and bring you up to the situation with Iran.
Okay. I'll start with life in Israel. We were joking about this before the camera started rolling. People ask, how can you do both? How can you be in reserves and run a company? How can you be a father to a family and while you're at war? And the simple answer is you can't. That's the reality of it. I've been away, I think I lost count, but I'm somewhere in the area of 520 days of reserve since October 7th, something like that. I just finished a round of 3.5 months a couple of days ago. And you really can't do the two things at the same time. You can try to keep in touch. I'll do on-camera work and stuff like that. But really, when it comes to long-term planning, in everyday life, it's hugely disruptive. But we're fighting a war, and it's a war of survival. It started out on survival on a personal level, and now we're sort of in this battle of regional survival against the evil Iranian regime. And it is what we need to do. When this war started in October 7th, I was at an age, I was 40 back then, where I thought I was done with reserves in the Israeli army. I'm a field officer in combat unit. Usually you're done at 40, 42, 43 max. Right now we're talking about doing this, into my 50s. So it's a very, very different life than we were expecting to be living. But again, this is the reality we've lived. I can't think of a higher calling in life or a more important duty than fighting for the protection of your own family and people. So here we are. It's been an interesting couple of years, let's say it that way.
So explain to the people, because this is foreign to most people who are not immersed into Israel, how the IDF works, because you're in the reserves, because in the United States, once you finish your 2 or 4 year term, you can choose to be in the reserves or you can choose not to, but you're going to be in the reserves for quite some time. So tell us how that process works.
Yeah, so Israel and many armies, such as Israel, the regular service, your first, in my case, it was mandatory 3 years. I did 5 years in my first, regular army rounds. That's the first phase of your military service. And then historically, the country bases its national defense not on the regular army, which is not very small, but it's not incredibly large. They base it on the reservists. And we maintain a regular routine of training, of also combat operations in reserves most of our lives. I mean, through your 20s, 30s, and then most people, this is at least in the past, would end their especially in combat units, end their reserve service in their early 40s. And what it used to be in the past is some years you'd come in and train several weeks, and then here and there, I was in a command position, so you'll come in and you'll do intel briefings and you'll do surveys of an area, and you'll prep for whatever you're going to do. And then 1 year yes, maybe 1 year no, it depends on the unit that you're in. You'll do some kind of rotation of, we do a lot of defensive warfare in Israel. So a lot of what we're doing is protecting in Judea and Samaria, protecting on the northern border, protecting on the Gaza border, the Egyptian border. You get the gist of it. So it's a lot of that over many, many years, depending on the unit you're related to. And unlike other armies, especially after October 7th, in the Israeli army, it's relatively fluid. I'm a tank officer by training and trade, but I serve in an infantry unit, light infantry unit, and have sort of been retrained and repurposed to do exactly that. And you sort of can move between them as long as you have the capability and the energy and the ability to run with weight on your back. And that's sort of the rhythm of life here. And I'd say things have dramatically changed since October 7th. If up till October 7th, reserve units would sort of rotate and here and there do substantial work, many of the units have spent, at this point, a year maybe in reserves in total since October 7th. Many of the reserve units now are back to the level of training capability and being in a well-oiled machine that we were in our 20s. I'd say I have more training and more battle experience now in my 40s than when I finished 5 years of regular service back then, just because of the intensity of the time we've been in, the budgets that have been put into it, the time with our soldiers, in the field that has really shaped the units. And that's life in Israel. And in Israel, you've been here many times, Matt. Yes. You travel around this country. It's normal to see reservists. It's normal to see people walking around with assault rifles. It's just a very different rhythm of life than other countries.
Yeah, so right out of high school, when you graduate, both guys and girls, men and women, they go directly into the Israeli Defense Forces, the IDF, and then they go to college if they choose to go to college after that. So it's service first, then college. It's an amazing system, and I think it's in part due to the resilience of the Israeli people. You were born in Israel. You are a believer in Jesus as the Messiah. So you have a very unique perspective with regards to Christian and Judeo-Christian roots, and also the purpose of Israel. Tell us about, for people, before we get to October 7, I want to get to that. I want to come back to where we are right now with Iran. There's some issues that are happening with some people, and I think they're really being revealed for what they really are. Tucker Carlson, for example, is one, that have this anti-Israel, frankly, anti-Semitic rhetoric that they are doing. Can you address that from your perspective of the centrality, the biblical importance of Israel, and just from your perspective as a Jewish citizen of Israel?
Yeah, one would say it's terrifying. It's not the first time, second time, or third time that people somewhere in the world have decided that Jews are the source of all evil in the world. It's not news to us. The fact that it's coming from the American right, from the conservative North American community, that's a little terrifying. The overall silence in quieting or opposing those opinions, that anti-Semitic rhetoric, the anti-Zionist rhetoric that you mentioned, that's quite scary. And I'd say from Israel's perspective, where I'm standing, the United States has been our best friend my entire lifetime, and even before that. President Biden, now Trump, in this term, they stood alongside us. They fight alongside us. We feel the support. We feel the love. I've met countless evangelical Christians in the last couple of years who've, expressed their love for Israel, care for Israel in person, and reached out to me to say that while we were, in the early phases of the war. And to see that diminishing, to see people fall victim to this, it's so bizarre. It's even beyond replacement theology. It's not this notion that the Jews have been necessarily replaced. It's this twisted understanding of how God's covenants work. And I want to say this in the most simplistic way possible. The fact that I'm standing here today is God's miracle. And I want to explain that. I am a descendant on one side to a Persian father who came from Iran. What became Iran was Persia when his grandparents came to the country. And a Russian Jewish mother who came from the U.S. I'm heritage to a family that that survived millennia outside of the country, made it back, learns Hebrew. I myself am a second generation to believers in this land, so I get to be a follower of Christ in the way it existed here in the first century. And our country has been supernaturally saved time and time again, including multiple times in the last week, Matt. It's not abnormal. So many miracles take place. And for someone to look at that and say, God doesn't fulfill his covenants, God has moved on from his covenant with the Jewish people, you have to be blind or without access to the internet. That's my opinion.
Yeah, in the Old Testament where God makes the covenant with Abraham, God walks between the animals that are split. Abraham doesn't walk between those animals. That's a unilateral covenant that God is not going to break with Abraham. It doesn't depend upon Abraham. It depends upon God. He's going to be faithful to his covenant. I would encourage people to watch this documentary series called Against All Odds, because it is really against all odds that Israel is existing. It's against all odds, Maddie, that we are doing this interview with you right now. It's against all odds that you are there in the land where the scriptures were written, the prophets preached, the kings ruled. The scriptures that we as believers have are attributed to the people that live in the land where you live throughout history. It is an amazing miracle that only God could orchestrate. And so I want to go back now to October 7, because October 7 was the epitome of hatred against Jewish people, despicable situation from Hamas in Gaza against the people of Israel. You have been called up for months and months because of Gaza, and now obviously there's Iran. Talk a little bit about some of your experiences, if you will.
Yeah, I want to say one thing that's very important for people to hear, which is we were living in a false reality when this all started. We forgot that we needed to fight for our survival. We forgot that we needed to shed sweat and blood and tears to fulfill God's promise in this land. And we needed a strong reminder of that. We were surrounded by enemies who've been swearing for decades that all they care about in the world is our destruction and our death. They swear by it, they declare it, they write it on their shirts, on their headbands, on in the rooms of their children, in their curriculums in the schools. All they ever say is, we want to kill the Jewish people, we want to destroy Judeo-Christian values, time and time again. And we didn't believe them. And we need to be reminded of how truthful that was. And we were abruptly awoken on the morning of October 7th to that reality, to the reality of people who are willing to jeopardize everything just to maim, to hurt, to kill Israeli citizens, Israeli innocent citizens, to kidnap them, to do anything they can to hurt them and cause suffering to them. And if you look at the ideological movement behind that, if you look at the religious and even the financial mechanism behind that. The Iranian Ayatollah regime, who spends tens of billions of dollars a year only to propagate terrorism, only to fund a death and suffering machine throughout the Middle East. We needed to wake up to that reality, and we have woken up to that reality. We've served in reserves and we've fought this war because these enemies have sworn to destroy us, and we need to fight for what was given to us and fight against that evil. And I'd even dare say, jumping into the war we're fighting right now, Epic Fury, what an amazing name, by the way. The war we're fighting right now is exactly that. It is an evil that has above every possible stage on the UN, in every newspaper, in every media outlet, they've sworn up and down that their only goal is to destroy the big Satan, the United States, and the small Satan, the Zionist entity. And they've spent billions, tens of billions of dollars annually doing exactly that. And people look at this and they say, well, we're confused why the United States and Israel went to war. Really? You're confused about this? This is confusing to you? I mean, all they've ever done is said, we're coming after you guys. We want to kill you, we want to destroy you. And we've stood up to that evil. I want to say this openly, whatever our political opinions are about these people, President Trump and Netanyahu have done something amazing, something bold, something that most leaders have shied away from, which is stand up to a huge bully, knowing that it would cost them, knowing that it would be dangerous, without knowing the outcome, and fought for the freedom of both Israel, the United States, and other countries in this region. We're living in a time where finally people are standing up to evil. They're not shying away from it. They're not mincing words with taking action. But, when the rubber hits the road, they're taking action. And I think that's hugely admirable.
I want to recommend a website called palwatch.org, palwatch.org. And what Maddie says, you may think, well, that's hyperbole. No, it's not. They have videos on that particular website of training to kids as young as first grade, second grade, even kindergarten, to wear suicide vests, to kill Jews, to behead Jews, to call Jews Satans, to call Jews pigs. This is something that's been indoctrinated in that generation, not just in Gaza, but in some of the other areas that are Muslim dominated. And that is to literally train these kids up from beginning. No wonder why they were such monsters, demonic monsters, on October 7. And what we saw happen in Gaza with the southern part of Israel, October 7, and Iran, it's inevitable. We have two choices. We could let someone create a nuclear weapon and then destroy Israel, Europe, the Middle East, and the United States, or we could stop it. And that's what Israel and the United States are doing. So, Maddie, with regards to your deployment, with respect to October 7, you've been on the front lines. There's many of your friends, some of your friends are no longer here because they've given their lives. Our hearts, our prayers go out to you. Any other thoughts that you want to share with us regarding October 7 before we switch specifically? I want to talk about Iran.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that has changed since then. One, I want to say this on a personal note. It really galvanized in me the understanding that, what God gave us in this land, it requires fighting for and it requires standing up for. And I feel personally, we were feeling too comfortable, too fat, too relaxed in this country. We need to fight against the evil that existed here. And I want to say also, if people are wondering, well, what am I supposed to do with this? You're supposed to pray about this. I say this in the most serious way possible. What's happening here in Israel really is a sort of a foreshadowing of everything that's going to happen around the world. Everyone's looking at what's happening here for a reason. October 7th was a test of Israeli resolve, Israeli willingness to sacrifice and to fight. And I think we've proven ourselves to be worthy, both as adversaries and as people of covenant, to really fight for what was given to us. But there was a sacrifice that was paid. I'm an adult, I have emotional resilience, and I've lived a life with enough conflict in this country to, not be shocked by every bump and every stone that we hit. But it's not the same for the kids. The kids in this country require a lot of prayer. My youngest is 10 years old. He, between COVID and this war, hasn't had a single year of school that was a full normal year in his life since kindergarten, which is crazy when you think about it. I mean, he's since the last age of kindergarten, we call it pre-K in Israel, all the way through the 5th grade, every year has been or in a bomb shelter or with a mask at home or both of them. I mean, it's been these bizarre, this bizarre life circumstances. You know, our kids wake up in the middle of the night multiple times with sirens to go to the bomb shelter because of Iranian ballistic missiles. That's our normal. They require prayer. They require people to reach out to them with love and with compassion, and where they carry them in their hearts and their minds, because that's a whole generation of young people in this country that, you know, have lived an existence that has been fearful. It's been, you know, in a shadow of terrorism and hate. I'll end with this. At one point, sometime between reserve rounds, my oldest daughter, who's now 14, she sort of cries out, exasperated, you know, why are the Hezbollah firing at us again? And I had to correct her. I said, no, this wasn't Hezbollah, this was the Houthis. And she says, who on earth are the Houthis? And I have to go through this whole explanation of why some guy in flip-flops in Yemen is firing ballistic missiles at Israel. And it just doesn't click with the kids. Like, why do these people hate us with such a passion? The only explanation I have, Matt, is faith and God and God's plan in this country. There is no way to understand it otherwise.
I do want to encourage people, as you mentioned, Maddie, to pray for you, pray for the Jewish people, pray for Israel. Let's turn briefly to Iran. You know, there's a different kind of a theme of some people in the so-called MAGA movement in the United States, America First. And some of those interpret America First as, well, you just protect what's around your borders. You don't get involved in foreign situations. And I think you already touched on it. Iran is a threat to the United States of America. It is an immediate existential threat to the United States of America. If we did not do something, we would be a target of nuclear weapons, and it would be over. The same for Israel. And as we see, they don't respect their Middle Eastern neighbors either. They would use it on their Middle Eastern neighbors as well in Europe. It would be World War III if we didn't do anything. Tell us about what your thoughts are about the current situation with Iran, and what does the future look like for you?
Yeah, I want to address one. I love the points that you're making, and I want to address one of the questions that a lot of people ask, which is why did Israel drag the U.S. into this war? And I want to just answer then and say, President Trump isn't a sucker. I mean, he's a very, very strong individual who knows where he's going. He came to his term as president with a well-established plan of what the world is going to look like when he's done with his term. And he's been following that beautifully. And I'll say to that, the war we're fighting right now against Iran is a just war. It's against an enemy who's sworn to destroy Israel. He's sworn to destroy the economy of the Middle East, but by extension also wants to destroy everything that the world has. And people say it's sort of hard to click with that level of evil. Why would they care so much? Well, ask them. They'll tell you. They're on a religious mission, and they say this openly, to bring forth this distorted Muslim messianic understanding of the way the world is going to end, that's going to return the Mahdi, their Messiah. And on the way to that, they're willing to burn down, literally and figuratively speaking, the economies and the lives of everyone in the Middle East. And they're willing to do that time and time again, and they've proven that they're willing to do that. And again, it goes beyond Israel. Even if you don't care about Israel, even if you're not willing to stand with Israel, this isn't just about Israel. This is about facing an evil. And I want to say this lightly. Let's say that the U.S. could get away with not standing against Iran. Let's say you could get away with that. Everyone else is watching how the U.S. addresses the Iranian issue. The next topic of conversation on the table is, what do you do with China and the Ukraine? Mm-hmm. And after that, what do you do in the South China Sea between the Chinese, the Taiwanese, and everything else that they're trying to do in the region? I mean, being the superpower financially, militarily, as far as sort of the name brand of the United States, that comes with a price where you need to uphold that brand. You need to uphold the justice that you represent in the world. And it doesn't happen just by sending SMSs or tweets, as people might imagine it does. It happens when you send boots on the ground, aircraft carriers to the Middle East, and fight for what's right. And I've seen the Trump administration do that. They fought against the evil that was coming out of Venezuela. They fought against other, bizarre trends that exist in global politics, where people think you can just talk about things and then resolve them that way. They fought against the Iranian evil time and time again. This is a just war. Simply said, if these enemies are not opposed, they'll continue corrupting and destroying everything around them. And ultimately, this ends up with Americans paying $8 a gallon at the gas station because there's no more export of oil. We're talking about a global stall in trade economically. We're talking about American ships not being able to travel around the world. And we're talking about terrorism that reaches far beyond the Middle East onto the shores of Europe, as we've already seen it happen. And then next, after that, to the United States. Evil that isn't dealt with early on it just continues spreading. They don't stop at some point and say, we're satisfied, we've had enough, let's go back home. That day never comes. So there is no choice. You or face this evil today, or you face it in 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, when it's larger and more capable. You choose which one you feel comfortable with.
And I think we either face the evil today or we face a worse evil tomorrow, one that is catastrophic. Maddie Shoshani is our guest. Thank you for joining us. Our prayers are with you, Maddie.
Thank you, Matt.
Our prayers are with the people of Israel, the Jewish people, not just in Israel, certainly in Israel, but also the Jewish people around the world that are now targets of anti-Semitism. May God's peace and God's speed be with you. And Israel has been the apple of God's eye. And against all odds, it has always existed, and it continually will do so and bless not only you and your family and others, but in the entire world. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being with us. We stand with you and stand with Israel.
Thank you, Matt. God bless you all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Matt, what Maddie said, what God gave us requires us to stand up and fight for it. And I was really inspired by his words. I think we've proven ourselves to be worthy. And also, evil is never satisfied. We have to face it. We have to face it today.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's amazing to be able to do this interview with him right there, real time in Israel. Matt, we've known for quite some time. He was, as I mentioned, the host on our Why Israel Matters that had been aired on this channel, many others around the country. But I think he had some profound statements to talk about why they're doing what they're doing, how they're actually having to live. If we in the United States were under circumstances like they are in Israel, we'd be shut down. Our economy would be a shambles. And yet, actually, Israel thrives, and the Jewish people thrive. There is something unique, not only now about the people in Israel, in the land of Israel, but throughout history that God has preserved in a unique way. You can't simply just ignore that. And I think doing so is detrimental to you as an individual and certainly to us as a nation.
No question. I mean, but the Operation Rising Lion, the Operation Roaring Lion, it is profoundly remarkable, and it just illustrates that if we are faithful, those of us at home, us, like Israel, God will fight for us, right? I mean, he will fight for us. In closing, remember Isaiah 26, verse 3, which says, "You will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast because they trust in you." Our freedom is a gift from our Creator. We must never forget that and always protect it. Join us here next time. You'll hear victories as well as ways you can stand up for your priceless freedom. Join us again for Freedom Alive.